Welcome everyone to Zoom into Books this evening. We are celebrating our authors with the Spring Fling Authors Celebration. Tonight we have award-winning, very talented authors with us, Jeff Weber, Don Helin, and Stevie D. And it's going to be a fun night. So we're going to get started with the program, and we're going to start with Jeff Weber, and each of these wonderful authors are going to tell us about their books and the inspiration for their books. So Jeff, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much for the opportunity to do another Zoom into Books moment. I'm a record producer, and I have been doing this for about, I guess, 40 years. Hence the headphones, you know what I mean? Got to do the low tech wherever I can. Anyway, the idea of musicians and jokes are almost kind of one and the same. The idea that there's so many stories and jokes and quotations about music and musicians that I started collecting these and creating some of my own many years ago. This book, You Sound Amazing, Every Single Lie of the Music Business, is my third book with Headline Books, and it's kind of the granddaddy of all of them. And you know, there's a lot of things that go on in recording sessions that could never be made public, but the ones that could be made public are all in this book. Let me tell you, we have quotations that you would be amazed that may be humorous, but there's truth and tragedy in every one of these stories and every one of these jokes and every one of these lines. And on the surface, you're going to be able to find out a lot more about the music business. But if you just, peel the onion one layer down, you'll understand the gravitas of what we're going through. And one of the quotations I wish I had put in the book, but I didn't find out about it until later, is your music's much better than it sounds. Wait, what? Your music's much better than it sounds? That alone is kind of a weird statement to make, but when you realize that it was Mark Twain who said it kind of makes it even weirder. But he was talking about Wagner anyway. But I just wish I had that, because there's so many musicians that are killer. And also there's a glossary of terms, so people who don't know music terms can become educated. Actually, I have to look at the glossary of terms myself from time to time. For example, I know that most of us have heard the term or know what perfect pitch is. However, the science of it, I bet you both people don't know. So perfect pitch is the ability to throw a clarinet into the toilet without hitting the rim. See, that's perfect pitch, but I doubt that you're going to find any musician that really actually knew that. So this book is filled with stories and anecdotes, things that musicians say and things that record executives say and things that producers say, and lists of things. Like, for example, one of the lists we have is things you'll never hear on a rock and roll tour bus. How about this? Oh, just leave it there. I'll clean it up. See, you'll never hear that on a rock and roll tour bus. Or checkmate. See, you're never going to hear that on a rock and roll tour bus. So anyway, it's just things like that, song titles that you wish you knew what they really were talking about, and drawings and cartoons and illustrations and things like that. And I've met so many wonderful people, and these jokes are just an extension of that love and respect. When a musician sees another musician, the first thing they do is they go up and they hug each other. There's such a camaraderie between musicians, and once the greetings are over, then they start ragging on each other, and that's when it really becomes fun. And I started collecting these, and I've gotten calls from some of my clients yelling and screaming at me like, "You're so mean, you know, heartless, cruel, rude. How could you possibly ever write these things?" And I said, "Well, did you like it?" And she says, "Hysterical." You know, I was sitting at a convention and a young girl, about 18, was across from me and we didn't know each other. And she looks up and she said, "You know, you're the guy." And I go, "What do you mean I'm the guy? I used to be the guy. I don't know if I'm the guy now, but what do you mean I'm the guy?" She said, we use your book as a textbook." And I go, "No, that's virtually impossible. That's physically impossible and virtually impossible." She goes, "No, I go to Berklee School of Music. Your book is the textbook." And the only thing I could think of is, really? For what not to do? Because this would be the textbook. I call it the how not to book of the music industry. She sat there, she knew the book inside out. It was hilarious. Berklee School of Music in Boston. Go figure. Who knew they were that smart? Anyway, there's lots of wonderful things in this book. I don't want to take up the time for my esteemed colleagues, but this is the answer. If any of you have a friend or a family member that is interested in books and music, I should say, this is the one. If you're a parent and you want your children not to be in the music business, this is your ticket to ride, because this will...
I write this down.
This is the secret weapon that all parents have if they don't want their children to be a musician. So I'm sure everyone's heard the joke. This little boy goes to his mother and says, "Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be a musician." And his mother says, "I'm sorry, honey, you can't do both." So, so that's what this book is about. And, you know, it's really fabulous. It's fun. And, you know, it illustrates the finer points of the music business and the dirtiest points of the music business. How low can you go? It's all in here. I have every single light bulb joke for musicians on the planet in this book. That's how low we'll go. But am I missing anything, Kathy? I mean, should I mention anything more that I forgot?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you, Jeff. Great job.
With a wet blanket, is that what you're saying?
No. It's a fascinating book, and it's really funny. And it occurred to me something that's even funnier is I guess he's my great nephew, is going to go to that school in Boston this summer.
In Berklee? Watch out, people, because they're using this as a textbook.
So that was news to me. So that's great. Well, thank you, Jeff. Next, we have Don Helin, and Don writes fiction and nonfiction, and he writes political thrillers and memoirs. He was a travel writer, and he was recently the editor of a new release from Headline Books, Voices from the Pandemic. So Don, would you please tell us about your nonfiction and your inspiration for writing?
Okay, sure will, Kathy. You know, one of the things that I'm enjoying about these programs is it's a wonderful opportunity to meet other writers. I had not met Jeff nor Steve before, so it's great to meet all of you. I'll have to start out by saying that I spent a career in the Army. And when I left the Army, after a lot of years, I said, now what? You know, it's not a big demand in the civilian world for a guy that's pretty good at writing Army regulations. And I saw where the Washington Post was having a travel writing symposium. And so I went to it, their travel editor and a couple of reporters, and they spent about 6 weeks going a couple, 3 nights a week. And I really enjoyed it. And, you know, Elaine and I love to travel. And I thought, why not travel and get paid for it? So I spent about 6 years as a travel writer. And then I kind of got the bug to write fiction. I love to read suspense thrillers. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And what I found is a lot of the skills that I learned in travel writing is very effective in writing novels, because what you're trying to do in a travel article is to bring your reader into your story so they'll want to go to this place. What you're trying to do when you're writing a novel is to bring your reader into the story so they feel comfortable in the story. So I started out with our little weekly newspaper and build it up to Harrisburg paper. And then I started writing for a number of magazines. And then finally I wrote here in central Pennsylvania, one of our biggest newspapers is called TheBurg, and I wrote for them for several years. And then I think it was about this past fall, I just, with Kathy, published my 7th suspense thriller, and that's Missing. And basically, that's a story of a third-party candidate who decides to cook the books using artificial intelligence to steal the election. And we brought it out in September, and I thought, man, if that isn't a timely story, I don't know. And that actually made it pretty interesting. About 3 years ago, I moved to Lancaster, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and met a lot of friends here who had incredible personal stories. One of my best friends ended up, when he was 18 years old, escaped from East Germany using a kayak, sailing out, and got picked up by a Dutch liner. And I thought to myself, these are incredible stories. And that made me start thinking about memoirs. I thought, you know, a lot of my friends have these incredible stories. So we started where I am. We started a class on how to write memoirs. And actually, that was going great guns until the pandemic came along and washed that out. And so I figured, well, we're just going to be on hold for a while. But then Kathy and I got our heads together and said, why don't we do Zoom classes on how to write a memoir? Which we did for about a month and a half, something like that. And we got a number of writers who were really interested in how to tell their story. And we said, well, let's take the first 6 months of the pandemic and let's get a variety of different people, whether they're being healthcare workers, educators, writers, singers, who each have a different perspective. And we gathered together, and I think Kathy said that she got almost 100 inputs, and we ended up publishing 32. And what we ended up with is Voices from the Pandemic. And we're so proud of it because it has won a number of awards. It won from Memoir and Reader's Choice Award. It won the New England Book Award for Anthology, Best Anthology. And so what I guess I've learned is the basic skill, which I call creative nonfiction, in writing a travel article is the same skill that it takes to bring your readers into a novel and to bring your readers into a memoir. And that was a lesson. It took me a while to put all that together. And we're having a lot of fun now. And it's nice to be able to kind of go out, you know, because I was during my career in the Army, I was in the Pentagon for almost three tours, almost 10 years. And if you don't think we have some crazy stories from those days, and I've tried to use those to create my hero who works for the President's National Security Advisor. And we've published 7 novels with those. And then at the same time, we're having a lot of fun writing memoirs. So that's kind of where I am, Kathy. I think I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Don. Not a lot of authors tackle several genres like that, so it's interesting. And when you bring in the words creative nonfiction, that kind of brings the 2 genres together. And you've done a fine job at both. And all 3 of these authors have won major awards: Indie Book Awards, Mom's Choice Awards, Reader's Favorite, International Book Awards. So you can get these authors' books at headlinebooks.com. and they're all available on Amazon. And I'm also posting links to the authors' websites in the Facebook comments. Those of you who have joined us late on Facebook, we're talking with Jeff Weber, Don Helin, and Stevie D about their books that have been published, forthcoming books. And now we're going to move on to Stevie D, who overcame definitely personal adversity with humor with the book that he has written that came out a few years ago. So Stevie D, would you like to tell us about that?
I sure would. And thank you for having me, Kathy Teets. And thank you for believing in my crazy story. When I started writing this, I was just writing as sort of therapy. I'm a stand-up comedian. I've always been involved in fitness. So my twisted comedic brain, when I got the news, was just to write about it. And I believe comedy is the best medicine. Moonshine's a close second, but laughter is definitely a good way to deal with problems and good therapy. But I was diagnosed with cancer and prostate cancer very young. I first went in at 42, thought something was going on. 2 years later, they found it was prostate cancer. So I got the literature, and it said average lifespan, life expectancy after diagnosis is 5 years. And I noticed on the cover of the literature, or the brochure, was an old guy in a walker. And I'm like, wait a minute, I don't look like that guy. So let me just put this down, and I'll deal with this the only way I know how, and that was to write. And so I started writing, and every night in bed, I would tell my wife, I'd be sitting up, and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm writing a book. And she's like, well, even if it's not a book, it's still going to be a good little diary. I'm like, no, I'm writing a book. She's like, you can barely read a book. How are you writing a book? But Kathy Teets got a hold of it. And thank you, Kathy, for publishing my crazy book, The Trans Am Diaries. I grew up in Kentucky, so I had a crazy white trash hillbilly upbringing, too many stories. So I'm like, well, let me weave these crazy stories in with the cancer. And I had just read Lance Armstrong's book. This is before he got busted for the steroids, when we still thought he was a good guy. And he was like, cancer, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nobody wants to read all of that bum out cancer stuff. Let me do a little cancer, funny stuff, illegal stuff, more funny, cancer. So I just wove the cancer narrative through the book, through the memoir. And so my wife still can't believe I had a book published, and it's done pretty well. And I said, the key to it is knowing your audience. So as long as you know your audience there, you did okay. But we're saying during the pandemic, and doing comedy is like therapy. So I'm at home with the kids, and they're doing the Zoom classes, and I'm coming in the back embarrassing them, flossing, and they're like, Dad, you need to get back on stage. You're driving us crazy. So I'm itching to get back out there and do comedy. And I spent about this year, I kind of had on the first book, I kind of had like a time frame. I was looking at like a year to write it, from diagnosis, being diagnosed to the 1 year mark, and in between some funny stuff. And then, so I spent more time on the second one, which is coming out on Headline Books. And it's another memoir. And I spent more time with funny stories. And just like Jeff was saying, like something funny would happen in the studio, and you write that down. With, thanks to social media like Facebook, you would go back, and then something funny would happen with the kids, and I'd make a note of that, because I want to make sure I spent more time on the second one to get all those stories in there. But the best compliments, I was just telling someone yesterday, the best compliments I've had on this book is when someone says, Stevie, I was reading your book on the airplane, and the person behind me was getting mad because I was laughing so hard. I was spilling their drink because they had their drink tray down, and every time I would laugh, their drink would spill on them, and I kept turning around and apologizing. And then I gave it to my daughter's teacher when she was in the 3rd grade, and I'm like, she's not going to read this, the teacher, for goodness sake. And she said she would wake up her husband at night from shaking the bed laughing. I'm like, yes, I've hit the mark. mission accomplished. But I was really surprised when the Prostate Cancer Foundation, which is Michael Milken's foundation, kind of took me on as like the spokesperson, kind of the young ambassador, and put me in Times Square. And then I was doing press with Dr. Simons, Jonathan Simons, who's like the head surgeon of like 3,000 doctors, saying, this should be in every hospital. You remind me, your writing style reminds me of Hemingway. And I'm like, you mean John Hemingway, the mechanic down at the Chevron station that works on my Trans Am? He's like, no, dummy, real Hemingway. But I was surprised. And thank you, Kathy Teets, for believing in me. And it's been a fun ride, and looking forward to the next one.
Well, thank you, Stevie. It's an incredible book. And
Thank you.
it was even more incredible to see your face on that giant marquee in Times Square.
I heard it got rid of all the rodents, all the rats that left town. They packed up, got the hell out of Dodge.
Well, all three of you have such varied subjects. And that's what makes this interesting, like the events that we do. When people come to the Headline Books booth, they meet authors from all genres with all different stories. And we do have some photos I'd like for you all to look at and comment on.
Uh-oh.
So if we...
Is
I
this your
heard
way of
that.
blackmailing us? Is that the idea?
No, not at all.
Did we sign the release on these photos? Let me see. Is this my mugshot?
No, actually, this is for Jeff.
Okay.
Jeff,
So-
if you could tell us the stories behind these photos, that would be great.
Oh, okay. So the top photo on the left side is a hard rock group called Honeysuckle Moonshine. The worst possible name for a rock group in the history of music. And of course, I didn't pay any attention to me. We did a recording actually a week ago, and we did it in a very dangerous way, what we call live to 2 tracks with no mixing, no editing, no overdubbing. So whatever you see is what you get. And, the reason why I did this record is I wanted to give it as a gift to one of the guys in the band who had a very significant heart condition and was away from dying. And he actually is the guy standing right next to me with the Fu Manchu, in the back row, not the guys holding the book up. And his name is Monster. I'm sure his mother had second thoughts. Anyway, his name is Monster. And when I originally met him, he was with a group called Jugular. You can imagine that that wasn't a group composed of ballads or balladeers. Anyway, he at that time, if you can imagine, he had one sprig of hair that was sprouted up and then kind of, splayed at the top that was iridescent green. So I knew we were going to hit it off. And I told him that I like doing live 2-track recording because we capture a performance rather than manufacturing it, and it's more cost effective. Anyway, so the guys went along with it, and they got a great deal. And the Monster bought a copy of the book for each guy in the band. And it was really a nice gesture. And, these guys are very nice. So surprisingly enough, they all welcomed. And as I said in the caption of this photo, because it was, I'm calling it the How Not To book of the music business. They used it as a determination of whether to work with me in the first place. And of course, they drink beer. Let me say they drink lots of, they drink. And so as the caption goes, had a significant amount, they decided to work with me. And then when they dried up, they realized what a mistake they made, denied ever knowing me. So the record came out pretty good. The photo below is a guy named Al Schmidt, a multi-Grammy engineer, probably one of the most famous recording engineers in the world these days. I think he has like 8 Grammys or something like that. I've got a long way to go. I only have two, but his book came out, Al Schmidt's memoir. And so I managed to catch up with him at Capitol Records and gave him my book. He gave me his book, and we pointed the finger. The picture below that is on the left is my recording engineer who's been with me for 35 years. He's a Grammy Award winning engineer with everybody from Pavarotti to Sting, and his name's Clark Germain. We had the opportunity to work with a young singer-songwriter from San Francisco who is on the far right of that picture. Her name is Ariel. And we did a Christmas record, and the record entered the charts at #1. Stayed there. It was a Christmas holiday, and it was her first charting record. So we're very proud of her. She sounds a lot like Whitney Houston, and she did well. In January or February, moving on to the top of the photo in the middle, imagine how quiet book conventions are. You know, it's very polite. Everybody's really polite. Just the opposite occurs at the NAMM show, which stands for National Association of Music Merchants, every January. Imagine every electric guitar manufacturer, every drum manufacturer, every cymbal manufacturer, every violin manufacturer, trumpets, trombones, electronic instruments, all demonstrating their products at the same time. It's slightly noisy. Musician, you're deaf anyway, but this is one of the primary causes. And so a panel discussion for one of the sponsors, Artesia, which actually is, was kind enough to give me this microphone and preamp so that my voice would sound a lot better. The photo in the middle below is from the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, NARAS, that give out the Grammys, which I respectfully call because no one's ever happy. So every year they do a gathering with their political representatives in various parts of Los Angeles, actually various parts of the United States. They make sure that those representatives know the problems that musicians are facing and what to do about it. Nothing ever happens. Okay, so the photo down below is from a contest that I judged called World Championships of Performing Arts, which is happening this coming year in November in Las Vegas, I believe. And those are members of the Russian team, members of who's come and congregate, and dancers, actors, singers, models, and instrumentalists. And I can't name any one of them. I do a podcast, moving to the far right, with a fellow named Florentino Buenaventura, the gentleman on the left, and we were guests of on a podcast called Making It with Tim. Terry's on the far right. He's a great guitar player, a producer, and a longtime friend, and he just understands the business a lot, and we had a great time. Photo below, I can't remember.
That's all right.
I think
That's all right. We can move on. We have another slide here.
Okay, sorry. Oh, all right. This will go much quicker. As you can see, on the far left is the elusive Bob Wynn, my illustrator, who's been with me and does all my records and has done all my records for 30 years. And we'll continue to do more illustrations. Down below, you can see us signing my first book at Barnes & Noble in Los Angeles. We were very lucky. 150 people showed up for the book signing and for the nonsense, which was, I was over the moon. Kathy mentioned earlier that Landau Murphy, top photo in the middle rather, and I did a record together. This was at Catalina Bar and Grill in Hollywood, a jazz club that is known for having great artists in bed. So bad sound too. Anyway, that was my inside voice, sorry. But Landau's a great guy, wonderful musician and singer. I'm going to skip over to the the beards on the right. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, Laith Al-Sadi, the guy in the brown t-shirt in the front holding the guitar, is an incredible guitarist and vocalist. And we put together an all-star band. When I say all-star band, I am not kidding. The guy to his left with the beret is the musical director for the Conan O'Brien show, Jimmy Vivino. And the fellow to his right is probably the most recorded bass player in the history of music, Lee Sklar. Lee Sklar. If you know Lee Sklar, you know that the best way to get his affections most immediately is to give him the finger. And he loves the faces when people give him the finger. It's not the faces, and he put out his own book of 6,000 photos of people giving him the fingers, from Jack Nicholson to whole stadiums of people. He's been on the road with everybody from, James Taylor, Carole King, and he makes the whole stadium give him the finger, and then he takes a picture. So his book came out recently. It's a 6-pound coffee table book called Everybody Loves Me. The rest of the band is, there, and you'll find people like Jim Keltner, one of the played with the Beatles, Tom Scott, who is, guys that have sung with Diana Ross, and horn players that play with Chicago. Wait, aren't Chicago horn players? Shh, don't tell them. But these guys actually do the parts. Did I say something wrong there? Anyway, so these are things that you don't even know, but this one happens. The founder of Rhino Records, co-founder of Rhino Records, Harold Bronson, is in the bottom photo with me at Book Soup in Hollywood. Harold is really actually a genius. And surprise, surprise, in the very first band that I was in, I think it was called the Heimson Oh No Band, Harold Bronson was the lead vocalist. And as I was playing, I was wondering why I wasn't fired, because there was no one that sucked more on their instrument at that time than me. By the way, the other people in the band was Jonathan Kellerman, a New York Times best-selling suspense thriller writer. The other members of the band went on to create and produce shows like Three's Company and just monumental stuff. So it was a very, very interesting band. Last but not least, my forthcoming book for Headline Books, The Pandemic Side Effects, a tragic comedy of unintended consequences, because I've noticed that behavior has changed because of the pandemic. And the best way that I could to illustrate that is to go to your neighborhood bank. You can't get in without a mask. No mask, no money. A year and a half ago, you walked into a bank with a mask on, you'd be thrown on the floor and handcuffed. NQA, no questions asked. So these 88 wonderful changes of behavior, including my favorite, which is, why should I drive to the store, half a gallon of milk for $3.18, when for an extra $27.50, I can have it delivered right to my front door? Are you serious? So I talked to my brother about this, and he goes, that's ridiculous. Usually $5. That's the most I've paid. This one's for you, bro. I mean, so that's going to come out a little bit later this year. And each one of them has a little sketch by my hero on the left. And as a matter of fact, you'll notice that the traditional author photos in the back of the book, he's done sketches of us. Hopefully I have more hair in that than I do in real life.
Thank you, Jeff. It's incredible, the people you've met during your career, and we're looking forward to your book. Let's move on to the next slide. Don, I think these are some new people.
Really fun book signings that I've done, and some really good friends. On the top left, the wonderful lady in the yellow was Lori. She started out as a editor and a writer, and then they eliminated her line for the company she was with. So she started her own publishing company, and she spent about 5 years as a publisher, and now she's traveling around the world, writing stories, helping people tell their stories. And I think this was at here in Harrisburg at the Midtown Scholar Bookstore.
Yes, it was.
And down below, I'm huddled down there with. Well, I see I must have my marketing whistle must have been up, because it looks like I have my copy of the certificate I got for my best suspense thriller of 2015 for Secret Assault. And then up in the center, seems to me that was I think that's when Kathy came to Pennsylvania, and we did a presentation together at under Penn Writers. And off on the right, it must have been, I see, is that Landau there? I think so.
Yes,
And,
that was the ALA in
American
Washington,
Library
D.C.
Association in Washington, D.C. The thing about being a headline books author is Kathy gets you to all these wonderful places. I've been to Washington, D.C. We're almost made it to Houston before the pandemic hit. We were planning to go to Chicago. I've been to West Virginia a couple times, and then a number of trips in different areas. And I think that's Dick Patton, if I remember right, at one of our presentations.
Yes. Let's go to the next slide, please. So in the upper left, Don, I think, in that Mystery Writers of America.
Yeah, that was the conference of the Military Writers Society of America. That is a wonderful group of military veterans who tell their story, and basically what they do is to help people tell their stories. So many of our military vets that have been through some pretty tough stuff keep all this material bottled up inside them. And so our job is to help them tell those stories. And we've traveled around to several different places in the United States, meeting with these vets and helping them tell their stories, and then publish them for them. And let's see, down here on the lower right, I see that's my friend. I think that's my friend Michelle and her Cover Maker Books, and we're doing a signing there. And then down on the left, I can't quite see who that is. That must have been one of our library presentations.
I think that's Killer Nashville.
Okay. And then up on the right, I don't recognize that. You know where that is? I think that's a Thriller Fest.
It is. It's Thriller
Yeah,
Fest in New York City.
I was fortunate enough to, in 2009, I became a debut author at Thriller with International Thriller Writers, and they helped me a lot in learning how to improve. And then each year there would be a Thriller Fest, and I was on panels each year and had a chance to meet some wonderful writers and just really have a good time and even drink a little beer on the side.
That's great. A lot of people don't realize how many events authors do attend, and that's the perfect opportunity to meet these wonderful writers in person and get a personalized autographed book. Let's go to the next slide. So Stevie D, you've had a very varied career here. Would you like to speak to these pictures?
Let's see what's going on here. All right, the top left is a podcast, and as I said earlier, when we kicked this off, is one silver lining for me of this whole pandemic was learning how to do the Zoom, and my creative juices don't stop. You know, a genius mind never rests. So I do a weekly podcast called Come On, Get Happy Hour. So I like to keep people's spirits up. I don't watch the news. I haven't watched the news since election night. no matter who, you know, may the best man win. And I want the best for our country. But I think overall, I want people to laugh and not take things too crazy and too seriously. So I have a lot of comedy friends on my weekly podcast, Come On Get Happy Hour. It's on YouTube and on Facebook every Wednesday. And I promote the Trans Am Diaries, the book, a lot. And I love having comedians. I like rock stars on there. I like hot rod guys. Everything in my wheelhouse is, you know, rock and comedy. So I don't step outside my comfort zone too much. Below that, from the trailer park to the Sunset Strip, that's true right there. That's another show I had about 5 years ago. The guy in the middle, Dr. Drew, I don't recognize him. No, I'm kidding. So Dr. Drew, I was on his podcast. And I think that's still available if you go to Dr. Drew on iTunes. That's still there. And he was trying to be serious. Of course, I wasn't having it the whole time. And so, yeah, I had a good time with Dr. Drew. Below there is a signing, I believe. Is that Southern Kentucky there, Kathy, I believe?
That's right.
Book Festival. That's my people. So that was great. Actually, that was my very first book signing was at Western Kentucky University. Well, I left Kentucky 2 weeks after I graduated from high school. I was enrolled to attend Western Kentucky University. I never showed up. So I was a little tardy for class. So I went back for my very first book signing at Western Kentucky University. So basically my message there to the kids and to the people was, you know, even I can write a book, so you don't need no stinking college education.
Great.
The top right is a monthly show here I do with Mike Marino, a great headlining comic, one of the funniest comics in the country. He and I do a show out here in Hollywood, North Hollywood, actually, at the Ha Ha Comedy Club. And they just resumed live comedy this past week, Thursday night. So I'm looking forward to getting back on stage and acting ridiculous. The supermodel down here is my wife on the right. I know she could have done much better. I married up. Everyone tells me that. This guy's name skips. Jeff would probably know this photographer. He did Bohemian Rhapsody, the famous photographer. His last name is Rock.
I don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
That was in New York.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, he was there. Very famous, you know, for the Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
So I forgot his first name. But yeah, that's who that was. So Rockstar Comedy and the Rockstar Photography there, acting crazy.
That's great. Let's go to the next slide.
That, where is that one there, Kathy? Is that?
That's at Book Expo America, New York City.
All right, that's New York City. A very first time in New York City up there. Who's that strange character behind me there, Kathy?
And that's Rick Robinson.
Of course. I love Rick. He's awesome. Right below that is my wife, Katie Dupin. And there's the gang over there with the lovely Ashley Teets there.
In Landau.
Landau, yep. Amazing singer. And Rick. There's Spencer Garrett right up there, the actor. And what's his name? His son there with the mustache. John Ritter's son. I forgot his name. He's also an actor. Had a great story that night. That's a benefit we did. I did a duet there with Perry Gilpin from Frasier. That's actually she and I there. But I told John Ritter's son there, Jason Ritter. I have a video of my son when he was about 2 years old, barely speaking. And I would walk and I'd say, hey, buddy, I got to go. I see you later. And then I hit my knee on the door and I go, oh, like I hit my nose. And he would fall down, laugh and say, again, daddy, again, daddy. And I told Jason Ritter, I stole that bit from your dad from Three's Company. The opening sequence when he would be waving and he hit the door and he was really doing it with his knee. And I said, I told that to Jason and he said, growing up, we had a lot of again, daddy moments with my dad. So that's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
So that's Perry and I down below. That's the big marquee inside of the Avalon, I believe it's called there, right across from the Capitol Records building in Hollywood, which is amazing because that's where it used to be they did all the variety shows in the 60s.
Palladium.
What's that?
The Palladium.
Yeah, so backstage is just pictures of Dean Martin and Mick Jagger and Tina Turner, and to walk out and perform on that stage was like a hillbilly's dream come true. Because ever since I was 5 years old, I would tell people, I'm going to be on TV. They're like, sure you are. Okay. You're eating the paint chips off your Hot Wheels again, aren't you, son? So it's just been an amazing journey.
Well, thank you. We can stop the slideshow. I'd like for, I know that the pandemic has changed things for everyone. And now that things are loosening up, we are starting a few in-person events. All three of you, I'm sure, will do virtual or in-person events with book clubs, schools, libraries, homeschool groups, college groups for Jeff.
Anybody that's brave enough
Stick with university. Jeff, didn't you teach a class in Dallas?
I teach all across the country on record production and the record business, and I also talk about subjects that no other person in the music industry wants to talk about. Two subjects that are very important to me are the titles of those talks are, the first one is, if you sign a major label record deal, your career is over, and I can prove it. As you might imagine, I'm not very popular with the record companies. And somebody asked me that, and I said, so, they haven't called me before. What are they going to do? Take my birthday away? No, I tell the truth. The second one is what people really need to know about music competition television shows. If you're an artist, what to do because I have clients on all of those shows. As a matter of fact, the guy with the beard and the brown t-shirt was on The Voice. And before doing it, we were violently against it. And then we caved in when he said the exposure might be good. And I said, okay, so you promised me you won't win? That'll be really horrible. And if people only knew what some of the things were going on these shows, and not from the contestant standpoint, it has nothing to do with them. It's from the shows themselves. Oh my gosh, how they treat the contestants and rip them off in every way. The public would be stunning. Here's just a little tidbit. The winner of The Voice is selected in the first episode.
Seriously?
100%.
Well, that's a total downer.
Oh, not only that, the phrase America has voted. Oh, America has voted is 100% sham. Please understand, the producers would never let the outcome of one of their shows be trusted to the public. Why do I know this? And you'll forgive me for another 60 seconds on this. If you go to nbc.com/The Voice and put in your email address, if you're voting for somebody on The Voice, you can vote 10 times. You can vote for one contestant 10 times. You can spread it around. Wait, I have a work email address too. Let me try that. You have 10 more votes. Okay, so if you know this and I know this, for sure the producers of the show know this. Now, my friend who was on that show had another friend who put in every single email address in his address book. It took him almost 2 days to do it. He voted 23,000 times. Okay. Again, if you know this and I know this, you can be assured that the producers know this too. So you ask yourself the question, maybe something else is going on. And yes, indeed, something else is going on. And so basically what happens at the end of the season, the show gets together with the network and says, let's look at the analytics. Oh, wait, there's a spike in engagement. Look at all these additional engagements. We're not talking about just signing up on a Facebook but they're saying that, as you can see, there's many more eyeballs. So we're going to actually charge you more money next year. And that's what's in. And then, of course, the network goes to the advertisers and says, hey, listen, let's check out the analytics for this show. Oh, wait, look how many more eyeballs you have. So, we're going to charge you more for a 30 and 60 second spot. So the
interesting. I wonder, well, I was going to suggest maybe those people are in Congress, but I won't say that.
That would
We're
be.
going there?
Thank you
I
for
couldn't
going
help
there.
it. I'm sorry. I take it back.
I didn't know we were going there, Kathy.
We're not. We're not.
But anyway, it's one of those things where it's very simple to say one email address per computer to stop that, but the producers have no
Right.
intention of doing that. So things like that I talk about, just the misconceptions of the business, and hey,
Well, and please tell people how to get in touch with you.
I'm very, very accessible. The best way to reach me is my email address, which is my name, Jeffrey Weber, JEFFREYWEBER @me.com, because at the end of the day, it's all about. Anyway, I respond to all emails because that's the way that I would want to be treated. If I'm sending an email to somebody, unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way. Actually, most of the time it doesn't work that way, but I respond to all emails. I'm not really big on the LinkedIn and the Facebook and all that stuff. I'd rather just, and once I get to know somebody, I revert back to my overall theme, which is I'm more of a talker than a typer. So we will talk on the phone. I'm very, very happy to do any type of public appearances, book signings, actually, to tell you the truth, and Kathy knows about this, but I am going to be having a very large book signing in December of this year of people that are in the music industry that have written books. I have already secured, people like Liberty DeVito, the drummer with Billy Joel for 30 years, Lee Sklar, who, the bearded wonder on bass, whose book is, like I mentioned, Everybody Loves Me. We have Grant Geisman, who is a guitar player, actually is an expert on EC comics and has done some amazing books, including having his most recent book published by Taschen. Kenny Aronoff, who plays with Bon Jovi, and on and on and on. So this is we're going to do all that.
That will definitely be a fun time, and we'll look forward to that.
Well, it's going to be even more fun because in addition to Steve Lukather, the leader of Toto, who will also be there, one of Headline Books' writers, Don McLeod, will be joining us too. Don McLeod's book, Gorilla Tales, is an incredible peek inside the world of a professional primate. Don was the American tourister gorilla and has had acting roles in movies like Trading Places and just
The Howling.
The Howling, and, and there's a movie with Steve Martin. Anyway, he is amazing, and watch what happens when the gorilla shows up, which the gorilla will. All bets are off on that one, and hilarity and madness will ensue.
That's great. Thank you. Stevie D.
Yes.
I know that you do personal appearances, pleasure on stage yourself. How do people get in touch with you?
You can find me on Instagram, Stevie D Rocks. On Facebook, I put my weekly podcast on Stevie D and his so-called friends, because I got a lot of famous friends, but they might not claim me. But I do a lot of live comedy, live podcast. I'm out carousing the town with people like this, Mr. Sebastian Bach, that Jeff and I need to talk. We got a rock and roll project coming up, and I tell all these stories, especially in the new upcoming book, where I took more time and went over. And each time I would do another read through, Kathy, even before I sent to you or the editor, I would say, let me just read through it. And I'm like, oh, damn, I can make this a little funnier. I know, squeeze a little more truth out of it. So I'm looking forward to the second one. I still love when people all the time, send me messages about the Trans Am Diaries and what it meant to them. I thought I was writing just some silly memoir, and it turned out to be so much more than that. It's been an incredible journey, but yeah, I like telling the truth in my memoirs. I've got a crazy life, and I like bringing that. Richard Pryor said the best comedy comes from tragedy, and so I always look like, I say ignorance is bliss, but it's really just the glass is always half full. Life is good, and laughter is the best medicine. So let's keep laughing, and check out my weekly show. Come on, Get Happy Hour every Wednesday night. It airs 6 p.m. Pacific time. I'm from Kentucky. I can't do good math, so I don't know what time that is over where you
It's
are,
about
Kathy.
3 hours.
Maybe the next day. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Stevie, I want to talk to you about Clubhouse before
All right.
leave.
Okay, yeah, I got a project I want to talk to you about, Jeff.
Okay.
Don, as a fiction writer and nonfiction, I know that you go to a lot of different events and you do workshops at conferences too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have really enjoyed meeting both Steve and Jeff tonight. I mean, what
Same.
interesting people. But probably the best way to get a hold of me is at my website, www.donhelin.com. And there's a contact Don. Also on my Facebook. I'm very active on Facebook, and I'll be happy to respond to anything that you send me on my website. And I think there's a group that we haven't talked much about tonight, and I think they're easy to forget, and that's librarians. I'm an active member of Mystery Writers of America, and they have a library committee. And there are libraries all over this country that are looking for people like us to come on and tell their stories. And that's what I think we try to do. We probably get 6, 8, maybe 10 libraries coming up this fall where we just go around and we just have really a great time.
That's great.
Tomorrow night I'll be on a Zoom, and then in another 2 weeks we'll be on another Zoom. So I'm hopeful by probably July things will open up enough so we can get around to a lot of my friends. Independent bookstores are another great customer for us, as well as Barnes and Noble. So thanks again, Kathy. This was terrific.
Well, thank you. Thank all three of you so much for coming on, sharing your stories. I think everyone got to know each of you a little better, and I look forward to seeing you all in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone on Facebook. This video will be live on our YouTube channel in a week or two. In the meantime, you can watch this video if you missed part of it on the Headline Books Facebook page and the Zoom into Books Facebook page. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.